The Youth Lab is a group of teenagers who are film fans who the Cambridge Film Trust works with to continue their love of film and to kind of help them focus on when it comes to the art of reviewing films. Right. And so if they're about to sit and watch the Whalebone Box, which I think, you know, it's such an uncategorizable film, kind of what tips could you give about how they would go about writing a review?
Well, I mean, the only way I can explain this is to come back to what I did. Okay. And so again, sorry to quote from my own review, I said, again, in the opening paragraph of it, I said, as with so many of Cotting's films, the central conceit involves a journey, a quest apparently undertaken to restore the titular artifact to its birthplace in the Outer Hebrides, thereby cure an amorphous unwellness. And then I went on to say, I have no idea how much of what is documented here is true. Suffice to say that it all feels profoundly truthful. So what I was trying to do was to say from the outset, this is what I think the film is, but I may be wrong. I used to be, because I still am quite strict about what a film review has to do. I think for one thing, you have to actually describe what the film is. You know, is it a short film? Is it a long film? Is it black and white color? Is it multimedia? Is it narrative? Is it non-narrative? Is it a horror film? Is it a comedy? What is it? And that sounds easier than it is, particularly in the case of Whalebone Box, because as you just said, I don't know, it's an Andrew Cotting film. The best way of describing it is unfilmed at Andrew Cotting. Second thing is it connected to other films? Okay, does it exist in a universe with other films? So again, if I can, sorry to be self-referential, come back to this. If I look at my review of this film, the other films that I've referred to are Lek and the Dogs, which is the film that Andrew made before that. I refer to a book, Leviathan, which is in part of the structure of Whalebone Box. I talk about Kiss Me Deadly, which is a film which is quoted in Whalebone Box. I talk about Out of Blue, the Carol Morley film, which it reminded me of in terms of some of its themes, its Schrodinger's cat theme. I mentioned that Sunset Boulevard and John Carpenter's The Thing are invoked. I talk about Shakespeare's Tempest because I think so all of these things are things that I think are important because they are the universe that the film exists in. Now, somebody might say, and believe me, they often do, oh, I hate that Kermode. All he does is talk about other films. You know, if you talk about, there's a film review of 800 words and he's mentioned 10 other films. Well, to me, that is part of the reviewing process. It's placing the film in the constellation of other films. Not everybody likes to do it. I do. After that, it's how does it work on its own terms? If it's a horror film, is it scary? If it's a comedy film, does it actually do the thing it's meant to do? I remember a colleague of mine, Alan Frank, said that when he wrote his first film review, he used a phrase. He said, the film doesn't work. And his editor said to him, what do you mean? You mean the projector broke down? And he said, no, I mean, it doesn't. He said, well, explain how it doesn't work. You can't just say it doesn't work. You have to say it doesn't work because this didn't and this, that, okay? And then almost the last thing is, what did you think of it? And that is nothing other than personal response. You know, there is no right and wrong answer to any of this. If you see a film that is like, for example, if you see a comedy and everyone in the cinema thinks it's the funniest thing they've ever seen and you're not laughing, it's possible to acknowledge both those things. You know, it's a populist crowd-pleasing comedy and I hated it. But you have to do that. What you can't do is sit there going, well, I don't get this, but everyone else is laughing, so therefore I'm going to say it's a great comedy. You have to put your own thing in there, even if you are, well, there's no such thing as wrong. That's the whole point. There isn't a right answer. It's like an exam where there's no right answer. The things you have to get right are describe the film, describe who made it, describe where the film came from, describe the galaxy that the film exists in. Then does it work on its own terms? And then what did you think of it? And those are in descending order of, you can get this bit right. What is it? But at the end, your opinion is just, you know, if you watched it and it reminded you of a summer that you had in Scarborough, that's fine. That's true. That's your truth. But you can't lie about it. What you can't do is pretend to have liked something you didn't, or pretend to hate something that you didn't. Because that's just not, well, why would you, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I just have one more question. You'll probably ask this all the time, but what is the hardest thing about being a film critic?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you about this. There is very little that is hard about being a film critic. And every time that I complain about it, and I do a lot, I literally have to kick myself to go, you've got no idea how lucky you are. I can't believe that I've made a living watching films and talking about them. Now, I would say that the hardest thing is you have to see everything, or at least you have to see as much as is possible. So what that means is every week you have to watch 8 or 9 films. It's just the base minimum, really. I mean, it used to be that there was 5 or 6 films released every week. Now there are, because you take online stuff into account. There's, like last week there were 19 separate features released on the same day. And I didn't see 19 of them. I saw 10. So, you do the best that you can, but you have to do it. So that means you do have to watch the film that, I mean, any idiot can review Citizen Kane and tell you it's a masterpiece. It takes a very particular kind of idiot to review Night of the Living Dead 3 and know why it's, good or bad. It's one thing review, any big movie, anyone can talk, of course. But I've always said, when I come from horror, that's my thing. My whole thing is, people say to me, I saw that Titanic. That's the worst film I ever saw. Come to my house. I'll show you the worst film you ever saw. Okay. And for me, you have to do the graft. You have to go through the stuff, because if you don't know what that looks like, how do you know what a great film looks like? So, I did the video column at Sight and Sound for years, and every month it was like 34 straight to video titles. That most of them were terrible, but some of them weren't. And you'd start to spot. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a series of straight to video erotic thrillers that were released in the 80s and 90s. And these were basically kind of, 90-minute detective stories that had a kind of, sort of sexy edge to them. And they were sort of meant to be sort of classy. And they were all called Animal Instincts or Night Rhythms or Basic Feelings. Or it was always 2 words, right? Always 2 words combined like that. And I had to review them for Sight and Sound. And I was sitting there watching one of them. And Linda, my wife, who's a much better film writer than me, she said, these films may be rubbish, but whoever it is that's shooting this is really good. And it was Wally Pfister. It was Wally Pfister who ended up winning an Oscar for working with Chris Nolan and shooting Batman. Wally Pfister began his career shooting films like, Greg Dark, Night Rhythms. And Linda was looking at these things going, these films may be terrible, but whoever's shooting these films knows what they're doing. And that, for me, is the thing about, you have to put the graft in. That said, that's not that hard. I don't work down a mine. I don't work on a bus. I don't, I mean, I've got nothing to complain about. That doesn't mean I don't complain.